let's enjoy some Dynasty trade values. Nate, we got 8 names here for you. Why don't you start us off with your first?
I talked a little bit about it in the last podcast that we're going to be talking about him today. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about T. Higgins.
Yes.
T. Higgins right now. I was doing some research and I came across some interesting stuff. T. Higgins has only played in 6 games so far this season. All right. In those 6 games, he has 38 catches, 489 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, if you're thinking like, hey, it's week 13 about, that doesn't sound great. But when you think about 6 games, it actually sounds really good. And when you break it down, he's averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game, which is good for a wide receiver 4 in points per game, tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So when T. Higgins is out in the field, he is scoring not just like a good amount of fantasy points, but a lot of fantasy points. T. Higgins looks like a wide receiver 1 out there. Remember, he's doing this with Jamar Chase across from him. Now, Joe Burrow is having a great year. He's throwing for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns, so that's helping as well. But the reason I really wanted to talk about T. Higgins is because he is a free agent after this year. He was on the franchise tag this year. He wasn't happy about it. I doubt that the Bengals are going to franchise tag him again. They have a lot of other holes they need to fill at this point. So he's an impending free agent. We've talked about this for years because we thought he might be a free agent this year and actually get to a different team. He ended up staying with the Bengals. But T. Higgins as the wide receiver 1 or another team is really appealing to me, especially when he can put up 18.5 points just in the 6 games he's played this year. If we can get, someone similar to that production when he's a wide receiver 1 on another team, then he is a screaming buy right now. What teams could he possibly go to? I took a look at the available cap space for next year and teams that could use a wide receiver like T. Higgins. Teams I came up with, 4 teams that kind of came to me with a ton of cap space. The Los Angeles Chargers, who I kind of mentioned in the last podcast. I think Herbert thrown into a mixture of T. Higgins and Ladd McConkey would be absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Also, the New England Patriots could use a wide receiver. Jalen Polk, Javon Baker have not looked that great. So Demario Douglas is the wide receiver there, and there's not much else. Demario Douglas and T. Higgins would collaborate quite well. The Las Vegas Raiders, they moved on from Devontae Adams. They need to replace him, someone to go with Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, Mike. So T. Higgins, a guy that could go there as well. And then another team that could use a partner in crime for their current wide receiver 1, the Washington Commanders. They have a young, really good quarterback there with Jaden Daniels. They don't really have a great wide receiver 2. T. Higgins and Terry McLaurin could be a great combination as wide receiver 1A and 1B. And I think in all of these spots, T. Higgins would be able to produce high fantasy points. I don't know if 18.5 fantasy points per game, but I think we're talking, at least 14 plus points per game, which is going to put him into that, yearly top 24 finish. And I think, we need to keep that in mind, especially with the kind of blow-up weeks that he's capable of. And we've seen in the past, we can have 30, 40 points in a week with his ability to, get a ton of targets, do really well in the red zone. So, Mike, that's enough of me talking about T. Higgins. Let's talk about some of the trade values here.
Okay.
All right. Tank Dell or Jaden Reed?
I would pay Tank Dell. I will hold Jaden Reed until my last breath.
All right.
Or until he retires.
All right. I would move Tank Dell, of course, as well. I would move Jaden Reed. He has not performed quite as well as of late. The first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he was looking like a true like top 5, top 10 wide receiver. Has not really seen that since. And when the Packers win, Jaden Reed does not do well. He does well when they lose. So I don't really love that correlation.
Interesting.
It is interesting. Next trade here, I got Isaiah Pacheco and a 2nd-round pick for T. Higgins.
Yeah, it's fair.
Absolutely. And then another trade here, packaging 2 wide receivers together, Xavier Legette and Courtland Sutton.
I would prefer if it was like Xavier Legette and a pick, because I would love if I could have a combo of T. Higgins and Courtland Sutton heading into next year. Courtland Sutton looking really good. But I understand the trade. I would say it's fair. I just would prefer to hold Courtland Sutton if I could.
I know. That's why I put it on here.
Oh, you do this to me.
You do it to me. I do it to you. I would make this trade.
All right.
I like Courtland Sutton as well. Not quite as much as you, I guess, though he's looked really, really good in the past 4 weeks. But I think T. Higgins just has a higher ceiling.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I don't know what team is going to be on next year.
That is true. Yeah. Let's talk about a running back here. Let's talk about Philadelphia Eagles running back Saquon Barkley. On the season, 1,392 rushing yards, 257 receiving yards. He is averaging right now 24 4.2 fantasy points per game,
That's insane.
which is absolutely insane. And the crazy thing about that is if you look at last year's running back one, Christian McCaffrey averaged 24.5 fantasy points per game. So he is right up there with last year's RB1. And he is currently running back one on the season. Derrick Henry, running back two, averaging 20 fantasy points per game. What does it take to get this guy on your team? If you're trying to make that push for the playoffs, hopefully keep him around for next year as well. A 26 first, a 27 first, and a second in 27 as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 3 picks for Saquon right there.
And you're not even 25 first. So yeah.
Okay. This one I figure I would gladly do. A 25 first, Michael Penix Jr. and Tyrone Tracy.
That's illegal in 30 states.
Only at 30, the other 20, they're like, yeah, go ahead. And this one I found interesting, straight up for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, that is interesting. If you're a competing team, that's an obvious go get Barkley. I know Gibbs is doing really well too. I believe he's RB4 in the season or something like that. But Barkley is just next level. I mean, as you can tell, he's averaging, like you said, 4 points more than the RB2. So I would make that deal if I'm contending, if I'm rebuilding, or maybe I'm like a middle of the pack team. Hey, I'll make playoffs this year, but I don't look like a strong contender. I'll go with Gibbs so I get the age on my side. But
yeah,
you'd be happy either way, honestly.
Also, good on you. Jahmyr Gibbs is running back 4. Saquon Barkley, though, averaging almost 6 points a game more than Jahmyr Gibbs right now. It's just his season that he's having is insane. As an Eagles fan, I figured he'd have a good season. Didn't expect this, though.
I'm sure you're loving it, though.
Yeah.
Just like I'm loving Derrick Henry on the Ravens. So,
and as you should be, man. That guy's something. So, Nate, looks like you want to talk about another running back. This is you talking about a running back. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who do you got?
Another impending free agent as well.
Yes.
So I got Najee Harris here, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Currently in the season, 191 carries for 749 yards and only 3 touchdowns, which is really impacting his fantasy production because usually we see Najee Harris scoring touchdowns, gets him into that fringe RB1. Right now, he's kind of a lower RB2 on the season. He only has 23 catches for 195 yards through the air and no touchdowns there either. But Mike, you talked about it last week. Najee Harris has never missed a game in his NFL career.
Yeah.
And as a free agent, I'm actually interested in these second contract running backs again because look at the success of Barkley and Henry, but not just those guys, also Jacobs, Mixon. These second contract running backs, if they're good running backs, hey, there might be something to it now. We are sensing a change here in the NFL and how they're looking at these running backs. I don't know if it's a significant change where these guys are going to get $30 million a year or anything like that, but there is a little bit of a change here. So I like that. This is a copycat league. Teams are going to try to copy the Eagles, the Texans, the Packers, the Ravens. They're going to try to make that happen with their own team. So once again, I went to Spotrac, looked at some cap space, looked at some teams that needed some running backs. Where could Najee Harris go next year? The Steelers, of course, they could just re-sign him. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. That's why he is a free agent this year.
Right.
So, but they could still re-sign him. No reason they wouldn't or couldn't. But hey, the Chargers, Dobbins and Gus Edwards only on 1-year deals. They're going to need a running back. They love to run the ball. Najee Harris kind of fits the way that they want to run the ball. I would imagine they have somebody else in there too to go with Najee, but that's a possible landing spot. The Las Vegas Raiders, they need a running back pretty bad.
They need more than that.
They need more than a running back, but Najee Harris might not be very expensive. And then this would be fun. The Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, they absolutely need a running back. I don't know if Najee Harris is going to fix that team, but I could also see Jerry Jones going after Najee Harris as the running back if they can fix some pieces around that. I think Najee could be productive enough with them. Let's talk about Najee Harris's trade value right now. Nice. A 2nd-round pick. Maybe you have to add a 3rd-round pick to this. You making that move either way?
Yeah. Right now he's a little bit down. He's running back 24 on the season, but still averaging 12.3 fantasy points per game. I think he's a guy that a change of scenery would be beneficial for. So, yeah, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I like Najee. I think he is a really good floor running back to have on a team. Maybe you don't always love starting him as your top 2 if you have good running backs, but if you need a bye week fill-in, you need a flex play at the running back position, Najee Harris is always there for you at worst.
Yeah.
Chris Godwin.
This one's a little tough. Give me Chris Godwin long term. I like Najee Harris, but we could ride Chris Godwin a little bit longer than we can a running back.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Godwin here as well, unless you're absolutely desperate for a running back right now and you're contending. And then the last trade I have here, Mike, I put this one on right for you. Trey Benson or Najee Harris.
Is James Conner under contract for next year?
That is a good question. I do not have the answer off the top of my head. I thought that he signed a 2-year deal before last season, so I would think he's a free agent after this year. But you're going to confirm.
He is. Give me Trey Benson.
All right.
Trey Benson on the Cardinals. We know they liked him. There's a higher draft pick, and Najee Harris likely going to be going somewhere else. But even if he stays in Pittsburgh, still going to have to deal with the whole Jalen Warren thing. So I'm going to go Trey Benson here. Go for the youth and the upside.
All right. I'm going to go Najee Harris here. I think, if Benson kind of hits the middle of his possible outcomes, you're just getting probably similar production to Najee Harris. So you need Benson to really hit, I think, to have something better than Najee. Now, of course, you have youth on your side either way. But I think Najee has a couple more years left in him anyway. So
all right.
I'm going to stick with him. Who you got here next, Mike?
We got a wide receiver. Let's talk about Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill. On the season, he is wide receiver 26, 49 grabs, 571 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Not very Tyreek Hill-esque. He's also nursing a wrist injury. He's averaging 11.7 fantasy points per game, also averaging 11.7 yards per reception. Somehow, how that worked out. And he's not had 100 receiving yards since week 1. Next highest total yards was 80 on November 3rd, and that was 4 catches for 80 yards and no touchdowns. So, Nate, this does not look like the Tyreek Hill that we're used to. So what are we paying for him if we want to acquire him? I saw multiple trades of a 26 first.
Yeah, I'm kind of Tua's coming back. I will say Tua is looking much better. So I imagine the Hill production will follow. So I will do a 26 first. Sure, if you're a competitive team.
Okay. What about DeAndre Hopkins straight up?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how you get this trade done, to be honest. I think you probably need to add a second to it.
Yeah. Well, all my trades courtesy of Fantasy Couch. Yours are courtesy of Dynasty Daddy, right? So we're using multiple sources here. So, hey, if you don't like the trade values, you guys are the one making them. We're just reporting on them. And the last one, Keon Coleman and a 26 first.
No, that's too much. Yeah. I don't want to put anything extra on top of that first round pick. I'm already a little wary with that first round pick anyway. So
if it was a 26 first and a throw-in player, different story. But Keon Coleman is not a throw-in player.
Yeah, like a 26 first and Trey Tucker.
How dare you? Nate, who is your next player?
All right, let's talk about Jerry Jeudy. Someone we've been a fan of for a long time. He's never really hit his stride, but maybe he's hitting it now with Jameis Winston as his quarterback. So far in the season, 45 catches, 645 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 11.2 points per game. He's only 25 years old, Mike. It feels like he's been in the league forever. He's only 25 years old, and he did sign that contract with the Browns after he got traded there. He is under contract there through the 2027 season. Now, big question mark is who's the quarterback next year? Is it Jameis? Is it back to Deshaun Watson? Is it somebody else? I don't know, but they did trade away Amari Cooper this past year. Cedric Tillman has taken a little bit of a jump up. Elijah Moore's looked good at times, but I do think that Jerry Jeudy is still the most talented wide receiver in that room.
Agreed.
So what's it cost to go get him if we're interested? How about Xavier Legette straight up?
That one's tough. I'm a Xavier Legette fan. Both teams have quarterback questions heading in the next season because we don't know if Watson's going to be healthy in time. What are they going to do if Jameis Winston wants to go somewhere else and be a starter? But I'm just going to take who I think is a better talent, so I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy.
All right, same. I'm going to lean Jerry Jeudy here as well. I don't think you're getting how old is Xavier Legette? Can you look it up real quick? He's probably like 24. So we're not really getting younger by moving over to Legette.
Give us your next one while I look it up.
All right, second round pick, which I am quite happy to go ahead and move for Jerry Jeudy.
Easily. How old did you say Jerry Jeudy was?
25 years old.
Xavier Legette's 23.
Another deal here. I wanted to have one where someone's trading down, downgrading to Jeudy. What that would look like. Terry McLaurin for Jerry Jeudy and a first-round pick, Mike.
I like this. Terry McLaurin's been a little hit or miss lately, but that's also been going with how Jaden Daniels has been going. But you're getting younger at a position. It's still a talented wide receiver. You're getting a first on top of it. This is a really good rebuilding trade. Mm-hmm. If that's what this person was doing, I like this trade. I would do it too if I was in the same position.
Yeah, I think value-wise, the McLaurin side would have to get a little bit back to make it fair. But at the same time, Terry McLaurin right now is the wide receiver 5 in fantasy football. So, someone's looking for points. I think you could possibly get something like this done. Maybe you need to throw a third or a throw-in player back to the Terry McLaurin getter. But yeah, I think that's a good deal to make.
Yeah, let's talk about yet another running back, and that is Dallas Cowboys running back Rico Doubtle. I've seen some chatter about Rico. Let's talk about it. He's the guy in Dallas, but do we really want the guy on that team right now? 19 carries, 86 yards, and no touchdowns for Washington. By the way, Nate, he only has 2 touchdowns on the season. None of them have been rushing touchdowns. They've both been receiving touchdowns. He's averaging 11.2 fantasy points per game on the season. He's running back 30. We don't know if he's going to be the guy in Big D next year. It's not going to be Zeke.
He's averaging the same amount of points as Jerry Jeudy, Mike.
Look at that. But what does it cost to get him? Now, this trade I would definitely make. Audric estimates straight up for Rico Doubtle. I'll take Rico Doubtle here.
So the thing for me for Rico, if you're not a contending team, I don't have any interest in Rico. As much as I love him, I don't see the long-term value for Rico. I think
his contract
unfortunately might be a flash in the pan. As much as I've waited for this moment, I don't know what Dallas is going to do, though. No one knows what Dallas is going to do.
He is a free agent, but that being said, I also don't think Audric Estime is the future of the Denver Broncos. So this trade just might end up being a wash.
It might be a wash. I think I will probably lean with a new blood, though, in this situation.
Okay, fair enough. John Mechie and a 26th fourth for Rico Doubtle.
Yeah, I'll make that move.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pick up Rico in that situation.
Yeah. And last one, a 25 fourth.
Yeah, I think this is good value for Rico. You can put him in your flex spot right now, and then while I don't have high hopes moving forward, he might still have a flex role moving forward after this year. So, yeah, happy to pay a fourth for it.
Nate, what is your next player?
All right. We've talked about him a couple times here already this year, but I think we got to bring him up again. We got to talk about Jauan Jennings for the 49ers, wide receiver over there. Brandon Ayuk's been out this year. Deebo Samuel has had his ups and downs. Didn't even speak to the media after the 49ers-Packers game, which was quite interesting. And I think a lot of 49ers fans are pretty fed up with Deebo, according to what I'm reading on Twitter. So let's look at his stats so far this year, because is Jauan Jennings, is he more than just a little flash in the pan for this year? 47 catches, 628 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
Not bad.
That is pretty good, especially when I tell you that over the last 3 games, he has had 29 targets, Mike. 29 targets over the last 3 games. So there are some rumors that Deebo might not be coming back after this year, whether they cut him, re-sign him, trade him. I believe they have options with Deebo. And Jennings is under contract through next season.
It's actually funny you say that. Sorry to interrupt. Niners Nation, ESPN Insider lists 49ers star Deebo Samuel an early look at possible cap casualties. And Deebo Samuel, 28 years old too. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Brandon Ayuk will be back next year. But yeah, so interesting.
Yep. They have Ayuk on the loan contract. They have Jennings signed through next year. They drafted Ricky Pearsall. Deebo could be the odd man out.
Very well could be.
So if we want to go invest in some Jauan Jennings, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
I did see him go for a second-round pick, but I also believe that depending on the league, you could very easily get him for a third plus a fourth. Mike, are you willing to do one or the other of these? Both of them? What are you thinking?
I'd feel better about the third and the fourth. I mean, obviously, the cheaper the better, but I understand the second-round pick if you're trying to push for championships. So I prefer the cheaper, but I get the more expensive version as well.
Yeah, I think if you're contender, the second-round pick is okay. You're assuming that's a late second. And hey, 29 targets over the last 3 games. If he keeps that up the rest of the season, you'll be happy you paid a second for him.
Oh, for sure.
All right, next up, Rashid Shaheed, moving somebody on IR for Jauan Jennings.
Love it.
Love it too. I'm all down for it. And then up next, Josh Downs for Jauan Jennings and a second-round pick.
Also, I did see that Josh Downs unlikely to play this upcoming week. I saw that
injury, but not considered to be long-term.
Okay. I'm still okay with that because another team with quarterback questions, Anthony Richardson, we don't know what it's going to look like in the future. We know Brock Purdy is going to be the guy moving forward, even though he did not play this past week. So I'm okay. I'll take the Jennings side here.
All right. Me too.
All right. Let's talk about my favorite position. Tight end. Arizona tight end Trey McBride against the Seahawks. 12 catches, 133 yards, and no touchdowns. It's a hell of a game. So get this. He's tight end 3 on the season. He's averaging 14.2 fantasy points per game, despite having 0 receiving touchdowns this season. He does have 1 rushing touchdown, however. It's called versatility, Nate. And for reference, every other tight end in the top 10 has at least 1 receiving touchdown. So this is about making the most out of your opportunities. Despite not getting either the red zone targets or the ability to get into the end zone, he's still tight end 3 on the season. That's pretty amazing. Nate, what does it cost to get the tight end 3, you ask? I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know how I feel about this one. That's why I put it on here, because I want to talk about it with you. Dalton Kincaid and Cade Otton for Trey McBride.
This feels like the situation where on one of my teams, most of my teams, I have 3 startable tight ends. And I'm assuming you probably do too, as Mike.
I have 7.
We are tight end collectors. My taxi squad is full of tight ends. So I have leagues where coming into the year, Cade Otton was my tight end 4. So in situations like that, hey, I have Dalton Kincaid, I have Cade Otton. I also have Pat Freiermuth over here. I can go after Trey McBride and still have Pat Freiermuth as my tight end 2. I love making a trade like this because Dalton Kincaid has been up and down enough for me where I'd much rather just consolidate, go get Trey McBride. Know I have that stud in my tight end position. So I'm good with this trade.
I'm good with it. That doesn't mean I have to like it. That being said, Dalton Kincaid not doing what we thought he would this year. Tight end 21 in the year. Cade Otton, though. Tight end 6.
Cade's look great. And I didn't even have a good reason to love him so much. I talked about him in the offseason. I was like, guys, Cade Otton. You got to go get some Cade Otton super cheap. And when people asked why, I said, I don't have a good reason. He's just out there and he looks good. And he just hasn't been asked a lot of them so far. But when they do, he's got it.
Yeah. I would like, if I'm moving Kincaid and Otton for McBride, I need just a little something back on top of it.
Like $6 fab.
Now we're talking. Next one, Kyle Pitts in a 25-second. For reference, Kyle Pitts tight end 11 on the season.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, me as well.
Move on from Kyle Pitts and don't put yourself through that anymore.
Yeah. Hate that it's come to that. The last one, a 26 third and a 27 first.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cheap for Trey McBride.
Yeah, I would
even in non-tight end premium.
Yeah, I'm completely fine with that because, hey, news for you guys, tight ends matter.